Hello everyone, I'm Dead Knight and this is In It to Win It. Today we're going to be talking about the Forge in the Barrens expansion and the Druid cards in this expansion. I'm going to give you my pick for the best card in the set for Druid, the worst card, and the card that we definitely need to talk about as something that's exciting for me. Before we get into it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel below. Make sure you get all the updates and all the latest videos and see what we have to offer for you and see if you can build your Hearthstone repertoire and get as excited about this game as I am. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into the Druid cards. Best card for me in the Druid set is the Razormane Battleguard. So this guy is a 2/3 for 2 mana, and it makes all of your taunt minions cost 2 less mana. So that means you're potentially playing free early game taunt minions like Bone Chewer Brawler, and it means you are curving into Greybow on turn 3, and it means that you are getting a huge speed up, and this is an unconditional, cost 2 less. The things can cost 0, which is going to open up into some potentially pretty crazy things as I'll get into later. But anytime that you can get minions on the board for free, and those minions aren't 1/1s, that is really a huge advantage, especially as early in the game as turn 2 or turn 1 with the coin. So at the very beginning of the game, you could potentially put out some board states that your opponent just will never be able to respond to. You could play this guy and potentially 3 cheap taunt minions early in the game, and even if they're a priest or a shaman or some other class that has a good early game removal, they still might not be able to get in front of that, and you could just win the game on turn 2. This guy is really exciting. It is, in my opinion, the capstone of the Druid taunt mechanic that they're pushing in this expansion, and I see a lot of potential in all kinds of decks, whether it's a Druid aggro deck that's going to revolve around something other than tokens, or as a way to hopefully jump ahead of the curve before your ramp comes into play for some larger taunt decks. So really exciting card for me. I expect a lot of great things for this. So ironically, that brings me to what I think the worst card in the set is, which is Mark of the Spikeshell. So Mark of the Spikeshell is a 2 mana spell that gives a minion +2/+2, and if it is a taunt minion, you're going to add a copy of that to your hand. So why does this card not make the cut for me if taunt is what they're pushing? Well, the reason is because there aren't any 1 mana taunt minions that Druid has that they're going to be able to play here. So it's not the same as Mark of Yisharge, which was getting action when Quick Druid Beast was a thing, because there were a bunch of beasts you could play for 1 mana and put Mark of Yisharge on them and get your card draw from it. It's also not Mark of the Wild because it doesn't give your minion taunt. So minion has to already have taunt for it to get copied. So really what you're doing is, if you're playing this on curve, you're giving a minion +2/+2. Mark of the Wild in its new form is going to give it +2/+3, so that's just strictly better. And Mark of Yisharge was giving you a card, which is also just strictly better. So what this card is really doing is giving a minion +2/+2. Adding a copy of it to your hand really isn't going to do you much good. The other thing about this is if you're running this, it's probably going to be in a more aggro build. You're not going to probably be playing this too much on large taunt minions, unless it's Greybow or something like that. Otherwise, again, it's not really affecting the board. If your opponent can remove that minion, they're going to be able to remove the next taunt minion. So because you can't play this on curve and maximize it, I'm not really seeing this guy getting a lot of action. Maybe I'm wrong, but it just doesn't look like it's going to work for me. But I do want to talk about the most exciting Druid card, the one that deserves the most discussion, which is Celestial Alignment. This guy is a 7 mana spell that sets all players' mana crystals to 0 and the cost of all cards in all players' decks to 1. So the first thing that you see when you look at this is that when you play it, you lose all your mana crystals and then your turn is over. So then your opponent is going to get the first crack at playing whatever they want for 1 mana. So just at face value, that's bad, because then your opponent gets to play whatever they want. You're going to be able to play 1 card to respond. They're going to play 2 cards the next turn, so they're always going to have the advantage on you at the outset. But this is Hearthstone. This is not necessarily a fair fight, so there are lots of ways that Druids can absolutely abuse this. So the first thing to remember is that Innervate and Lightning Bloom don't work with this because they cost 1 mana, so you can't play this guy and then Lightning Bloom and play 2 things. But what you can do is you can play Razormane Battleguard and then play this guy, and then all of your taunt minions cost 0, and then you can just parade out a huge board of taunt minions, and your opponent will only have 1 mana to respond. So that's pretty nuts. The other thing you can do is you can play this card while you're winning, while you have a improved board state, and then they're only going to be able to play 1 card to respond to it on their next turn. So even though they have the mana advantage, you have the board advantage, and it'll be hard for them to get it back. So that's if you have no shenanigans. It still potentially could be played kind of like how Mojo Master Zihi was played to prevent your opponent from responding to your board state. But the other thing to remember is that you've got ramp cards that are all going to cost 1 mana. Some of those ramp cards, like Nourish, which will gain you 2 mana crystals, those are not empty mana crystals, so your first turn you can play Nourish, or 2 Nourishes, and then you have a bunch of mana at your disposal to outpace your opponent. So there's ways without total shenanigans that works. You also have cards in Wild, like Biology Project, that are going to do essentially the same thing. So there's a bunch of ways to get ahead of your opponent with mana if you just play this at the outset. But then cards like the Razormane Battleguard can really just blow the game open for you. So it is really exciting to see what Druid can do with this. I can see this coming out, even though it looks on its face like it is potentially a dangerous play. There's a lot of ways that you can really exploit this card, so it's very exciting. Anyway, what do you see about the Druid set in Forge in the Barrens that excites you? What do you think is the best and worst? Please leave some respectful comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, and tune in next time.